Hey, what's going on everyone, and welcome to this tutorial where we're going to be looking at cyberpunk photography and how to turn this image into this inside of Lightroom. Let's do it. So in Lightroom, the first things we really want to play around with is our temperature and tint, and that'll change quite a fair chunk of the image. So we want our blues. We want to make the image a bit cooler, so we want to pull down our blues just a little bit so we're sort of happy with how it looks. And most of this stuff is going to be to preference and what your image looks like. So we want to turn it down, and then we want to start playing with the contrary color with our tint, and that's to add pink into the image. So we want to do a slightly go until we're sort of happy with that. And already you can see quite a huge difference. And we're starting to get that just by changing those two controls. We're already starting to get exactly the cyberpunkish type feel. But now that we've done that, we want to start playing around with our tone settings. So getting all those right for the style of the image we want. And then we'll adjust the colors again a little bit later to get the final image of what we want. So the first thing we might do is add in a little bit of contrast. And then with our shadows, we want to just raise them a bit, bring out a bit more of the detail. And it's always good to shoot these images in RAW, just so you have more flexibility in post to play around with all these things without it destroying the image. So that's not too bad. And you can, with Lightroom, you can always go back and readjust the settings at the end to get in and refine it, which we'll probably do. Next thing we want to do is with our whites, just pull them down slightly, just to take a little bit of the punch out of that. And then our blacks, I don't mind the look of the sort of flatter image for these. So pulling up the blacks takes a lot of that out of it, but we don't want to go push it too far. So probably about there is all right. And we go down a little bit. We want to play around with some of these texture, clarity, and vibrance. So we'll take the texture down just slightly. And clarity I prefer clarity taking it down a little bit as well. It gives it that sort of a bit more, taking the clarity and texture down slightly, gives it more of that, a bit more of a dreamy feel. So as you can see, before, after, it's a fair bit of difference, and just give that bit more of a dreamy sort of look. And then with vibrance, I only want to push that up just very slightly, and that looks pretty good. And that's all to taste as well. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to very slightly play around with the contrast curve. We're just going to very slightly add in a tiny little bit more contrast till we're happy with it. And that's really all you need to do. Just adds that tiny little bit more contrast. Brings down the blacks a little bit. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to come down to our HSL sliders. And for the most part, we're only going to play around with our hue. We'll come back and we'll fix up saturation and luminance depending on how the image turns out. But we're really going to just focus on these because this will change the colors a fair chunk. So the first thing we're going to do with our color, we'll look at our reds. So we'll look at the reds in our image, which mainly is these parts here. So we bring that down slightly. You can see it's starting to become a bit more pink. Go the other way, it becomes more orange. We want to keep it with that pink, so we've got the pink and blue vibes. As you say, orange doesn't change anything, so we can just ignore that. Yellow, again, nothing. Green slightly changes that blue tint, but doesn't affect it too much, so we don't need to worry about that. So if we look at our aqua, we've got this will mainly be affected here. So we take it right down, gives that bit more of a greeny vibe. Take it right up, brings it back to that blue. We'll just leave it about plus 56 is good. Now again, with our blue, does, as you can see, it does a huge amount of blue. So we want to bring this slightly down. You see it's really affecting the sky. We just want that bit brighter sky. And it also affects these shops here. It really gives it that neon-y type of feel. But you don't want to overdo it. Just do it to preference. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the purples and the magentas. So if we pull the purples down, you can see it in the shadows here. Really starts bringing out the blues there. So we want to take that down slightly. So now in this foreground here, we've got our pink on the side, and then on the other side, we've got our blues there. And then we want to finally just change our magenta a little bit. Turn a magenta up. You can see it's happening in the buildings, and mainly here is changing it up and down. So we look at our original image. As you can see, it's starting to come together really nicely. Huge difference. So it's turning out very nice. And then finally, we want to come down to our calibration. And this is where we're going to put in our final adjustments. So we're going to start with our tint. And we want to just raise the tint very slightly. So this is just more minor adjustments to our image. As you can see, it's really affecting. We don't want to get rid of too much of the purple down here. We just want to accentuate the blues very slightly. Then we want to come to our reds. Take that down slightly. Pump a little bit of saturation into that. Now in the greens, this is actually going to affect quite a large portion of the image. As you can see, going all the way that way turns it very pink. Going the other way makes it very blue. So it just depends on the feel you want. We want to make sure it's pretty split, so we want to take it up just slightly so we've got pretty even with our blues and our magentas and pinks. As you can see with our blues, it makes a huge difference. So if you want it to really affect whether it's a brighter blue image or a very darker, sort of more swayed to the pink image, you can adjust this. We don't really need to, well, I'm happy with, I might just touch down a tiny little bit towards the blues, but other than that looks really nice. Look at our original image. Absolute massive difference, and sort of that's how you get your cyberpunk. And then once you've done that, you can come back up to saturation. If you want to pump the pinks a little bit, add a bit of saturation into pinks, magentas, you can go through and do that to taste. Luminance, which is increasing the brightness on each color. So we want to pull our blues up, making our blues a bit brighter, we can do that, but I'm happy with how it is. You can look at that image if you're not 100% happy with it yet. Have a look at these two things and you'll be able to do some final refinement in these. Well, that'll about do it for today's tutorial. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to hit me up on Instagram at jared.peck. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.